Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get us started. I am Taylor Post, Swiftland's Office Manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Say No, and today's presenter, Linda Bruno. Linda Bruno has been developing and conducting training workshops for libraries and other organizations for more than 15 years. She offers workshops on topics ranging from leadership skills to returning balance and lots of areas in between. Linda received her MBA from the University of Florida and has years of experience in hands-on management positions. She develops her workshops based on solid research and, more importantly, real-life application. Please welcome Linda Bruno and enjoy her webinar this afternoon. Linda?
Thanks so much, Taylor. Susanna, I'm sure that Taylor will be able to address the echo for you. Sometimes it's a matter of having a speaker and a headset on or whatever. I'm not technologically adept at those kinds of things, but I know she'll take care of that for you. So welcome everybody to today's session on saying no. The first thing I want to address is that I want to be really clear that this is not meant for us to be selfish, that we need to say no to everything everybody asks us and all those kinds of things. That's not what it's about at all. But it is about our ability to say no when it's in the best interest of everybody involved, even when the people that are involved with us don't think it's in their best interest for us to say no. I want to go through the process of you finding why it's important for you to say no. So the entire first chunk, if you will, of this webinar is going to be about why you think that's important to you, not to me, not to Taylor, not to anybody else in the room, but why is it important for you to become more adept, again, that word, if you will, at saying no. I have several ideas on my end, but you'll need to come up with a compelling reason because if you're not already saying no, you need to find a reason that is important enough to you that you will make some changes. So, with that being said, I want you to type into the chat box, if you will, why you came to this webinar. What attracted you about the idea of saying no? Would you type that into the chat box for me, please? Yeah, Dee, exactly. That's a great word, boundaries. I think I have that listed in my whole big list that I made, actually. Absolutely setting boundaries. George says standing my ground and being firm. Yeah, that's really all it's about, isn't it, George? A lot of times it's about standing our ground. It doesn't mean we have to be obnoxious or arrogant or snarky or mean or rude or any of those things. It just means that sometimes we need to say no. And Natalie said, very good point, Natalie. I'm a people person and I try to say yes to everyone. And then what happens is the resentment builds for us sometimes, doesn't it? Because we sort of sit back and think nobody pays any attention to what I need or what I want. And that's not really healthy for us emotionally to feel that way. So that's what we want to face today. Being asked too much of. Yeah, and that happens a lot. And guess what? When we say yes, then what happens? We get more, don't we? Daniel said, no is one of the most important words I ever learned. Exactly, Daniel. And you know what? Sometimes we have to relearn it, don't we? We get people in our lives. It might be our personal lives because this is a very important topic for our personal lives as well. So it might be in our personal lives or it might be at work where we went into saying yes with the best intentions, but then maybe the person kind of overdid it or overused it or situation has changed and we need to relearn how to say no sometimes. Health and sanity, exactly, Yvonne. It's hard to say no to a customer. Yes, it is. And there are many instances when we need to do that. And I think today more than ever, people are expecting us to sort of roll over and be a doormat because society is telling us we have to do whatever anybody else expects us to do. That really doesn't serve us very well, does it? And a lot of times it doesn't serve our organization very well. We're overloaded. Absolutely, Joanne. Learning how to not be a pushover. Yep, Latoya, I hear ya. Lisa said, I want to say no without feeling guilty about it. I'm just going to read through these real quick. I want you to hear that there are people in the room that have the same issues you do. I have problems saying no at work when asked to do something, be able to say no in the correct way, and sometimes I have to say no, not to take on too much and can't handle it, avoid over agreeing, have a tendency to say yes to everything, and I need to learn to say no, be firm without upsetting the other person, come off as, and you know what, when I say no, I always end up saying yes. If you have limited resources, you have to say no, especially when personally ask for time, when you personally ask for time off. Absolutely. Or when personnel ask for time off. Yeah, I think you've caught a lot of mine. But again, I'm going to reiterate some of these because at the end of this particular segment, if you will, I want you to write down which one you're going to grab hold of, because tomorrow will come and you will say yes again. And next week will come and you will say yes again. It's what we do. And there are many, many times that's the appropriate answer. But I want you to have a resource, and that's what the handouts are for. Taylor sent you the handouts with the email that got you into this room. I highly suggest you print those handouts because, like I said, when you backslide a bit, you can go back to this and say, yes, this is why I'm doing this, because I need to learn to say no for these reasons. And Susan said she just said yes before the email. So there you go. And again, Susan, it's very appropriate for us to say yes most of the time, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, as the days go by, there are lots of things that happen to us every single day, and the correct answer is yes, or let me work on that, or whatever it might be. But we know somewhere deep down when somebody is asking something of us that won't be in our best interest or maybe even in their best interest, and yet we go ahead and do it anyway just because we don't want to upset them. We don't want that big word that we call conflict, which really is not even the case in most instances. It's just that we're not comfortable saying no. So you've all listed your specific reasons. I'm going to give you some more. I want to give you enough tools in your toolbox. Susanna, it's going to be in your vocabulary after today, but you will have to practice. And I hope everybody heard that very clearly. You have to practice. There's no magic wand. There's not a magic wand that has the word no attached to it, and all you have to do is wave it, and you feel all wonderful and fuzzy about saying no to people. If it's in our nature to say yes all the time, that's in our nature. And we have got to be intentional and be willing to endure, if you will, the discomfort that might come with that. But here's what I promise you. If you practice it, you will become more comfortable with it. I didn't say you'll get totally comfortable with it, but you will become more comfortable with it because you've created a new pathway in your brain. Right now, your brain says, oh gosh, somebody asked something, we automatically say yes. That's what your brain thinks because that's what it's used to. But what if you took those few seconds to step back and say, is this the time to say yes? And you decide it is not the time to say yes. And you say no. Well, your brain will go, what? What did you just say? Are you sure? And it will make you feel a little uncomfortable. That's just how we're wired. But if you do that often enough, and not all the time, but often enough where you know that there are certain situations, maybe even certain people, where you need to say no, your brain starts to recognize that. There is a part of our brain system, if you will, called the reticular activating system, which is a real long term. And all it means is it's what helps us decide how we're going to process things throughout the day. It's at the base of our brain, and everything we sense in a day goes through our reticular activating system. So if all along we've been saying yes, 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 then our reticular activating system says, huh, I think that's what we need to do here because that's what we're always doing. So I'm going to find ways for Linda to feel comfortable saying yes because that's apparently what Linda wants to do because that's what we're always doing. But if I retrain my reticular activating system, so to speak, and I start helping it look for the reason I should say no, the feeling I will have once I say no. Yes, I might be uncomfortable at first, but then usually it's a feeling of relief, isn't it? Or it's a feeling of self-confidence or self-esteem or whatever it might be. So here's some of the ones that I wrote down. Just you may want to add some of these to your list because if you don't have enough on your list, you'll just slide back. Increased assertiveness. Some of you alluded to that when you talked about setting boundaries and somebody said no is the best word I've ever learned. That's all about assertiveness. Now, it doesn't mean we need to go into aggressiveness, does it? And aggressiveness is when we're in somebody's face and we're rude and we're abrupt. That's not what this is about. Somebody said just holding my ground. That's all it's about. Standing up for myself without being mean to people. So increased assertiveness can serve us in a lot of ways, can it? It can serve us with our patrons, and some of you mentioned that. I need to learn how to do that with my patrons. Might serve us with our coworkers, with our significant others, with our supervisors. Yeah, exactly, Natalia. That's probably why you're here, because you can't say no either easily. And there are situations, I'm going to tell you, when my sister was alive, I had the hardest time saying no to her because she had a hard life. And even though I knew that some of the issues that she dealt with were brought on by her, it was still hard for me to say no to her. I loved her. And yet I knew it wasn't healthy for her either, for me to always say yes. So we need to recognize that as well. So increased assertiveness. Another thing is increased self-confidence, because when you increase your assertiveness, you can increase your self-confidence and vice versa. Better time management. Guess what? Here's a challenge for you. The next time you say yes to something you know you shouldn't, decide what you're going to take out of your day. Because if you say yes to something that's going to take an hour, have any of you figured out a way to create a new hour? If you have, please send that to me because I always have things I want to be doing that I don't have time for. But isn't that what it boils down to? We say yes to something when we've got things lined up that will take up all of our time, but now we say yes to something. Yeah, wake up at 4:30. Yeah, I figured, Brent, that's what you meant. Yeah, maybe 3:30, right? Yeah, but that's not healthy for us either. And then we get more stressed, more tired, more fatigued, all of that. You all know how that goes. We'll have less stress if we actually learn to say no a little more frequently. And here's what I want you to hear. And some of you have been in my programs before, so you've heard this analogy, but I want you to picture in your mind right now a yardstick, 36 inches, piece of wood, yardstick, 1 inch on the end, 36 inches on the other. But we're going to look at that as an A to Z continuum. So A is at the 1 inch mark, Z is at the 36 inch mark. What if when you came in today, you are only at a D level of being able to say no? And you just feel like, I'm never going to get any better at this. But what if you made a commitment to yourself? And of course, to me, I hope you'll do that. But I can't follow you around, can I? I can't check up on you a week from now or 30 days from now. This commitment needs to be made to you. And you came in at a D level today and you said to yourself, I am over the next 3 months going to improve my ability to say no up to a G. Okay, so that's not perfect. But guess what? Nobody is perfect. Do you think that would make a significant difference for you? I'm pretty sure it would. D to G, you're going to be saying no occasionally. You're going to feel better about that. You're going to practice that, and you're going to become better at it. So less stress is absolutely a positive result. It's easier to prioritize when you don't have 3,912 things to prioritize. Let's reduce it down to 2,912 things, right? But it's easier to prioritize. You'll be able to keep margins. And what I mean by margins is white space, but not just in your calendar, in your life. There's a lot of life being thrown at us these days, right? With social media and all the negative stuff we hear on the news and all of the interactions we have with people who are also interacting with other people that are causing negativity and all of that. We need some headspace, don't we? We need some white space in our minds and in our lives that allow us to step back and reflect occasionally. I hope I'm providing a little bit of white space for you here today, even though we're engaging and we're interacting together. Yes, Jennifer, it is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and refer to it. It's one of the reasons I always tell people to hang on to their handouts, because you can end up with a little mini manual that will help you when you slide backwards. Most of us, if we have areas of life that we aren't quite where we would like to be, and we work on that and we get better, most of us will at some point slide back a little bit, depending on the situation. And it's not just in the area of saying no. There are other areas that we try to improve upon, and we kind of move along that way, but then we slip back. So keeping margins for Linda Bruno, this is one of the big ones. I am an introvert. I am a very high introvert. Introverts need margins even more than extroverts do. And if I look at my calendar, one of the reasons I keep a paper calendar is that I color code it. And I can look at my calendar and see if I've said yes too much, because there are bright orange spaces where I've got work-related tasks I need to do. There are pink spaces where there are actual webinars. There are blue spaces where I've made personal commitments. And when I look at a calendar and it's all colored in, it's time for Linda Bruno to say no to some things. And here's the other thing, folks. Sometimes the things I have to say no to, I need to say no to, are things that I would have rather done. Honestly, somebody wants to go out for lunch and I look at my calendar and say, you know what? No margin this week. I can't go for lunch. It will stress me out too much. I need to prioritize what's already in front of me. So hopefully some of these things that I'm throwing out at you will solidify, if you will, the reasons you showed up today to begin with. I want to be able to take advantage of other opportunities. Just say yes if this has ever happened to you. You said yes to something and you weren't really enthused about it. You really wish you would have said no to it, but you said yes. And guess what? Something more exciting, something more challenging, something more fun came along, and you couldn't do it because you already said yes to something you knew you should have said no to. Just say yes or no. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah. Yes, 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 John said. Yes, yes, I agree with that. I think most of the people in the room could agree with that. That right there's a pretty good reason to step back, isn't it? And to say, you know, I'm not gonna be mean to people. I'm not gonna be the Grinch that stole Christmas. I'm not gonna be the one that won't ever help anybody. But when I know I'm doing something because somebody maybe has taken advantage or they've manipulated me a bit, my sister could manipulate me a little bit. And sometimes I'd have to step back and think, she created this. She knows she created this. She's going to create it again. Where am I going to say no in the middle? So if I said yes too often, then I didn't have a chance to do things that would have been more beneficial, not just for me, but maybe for somebody else too. So be thinking about that. What opportunities, I'm not going to ask you to put it in the chat box, but I want you to actually write down on your handouts, what opportunity might you have missed in the last 6 months because you said yes to something you knew you really probably shouldn't have. You don't have to answer in the chat. I just want you to think that through for yourself, because like I said, this is very self-reflective. And so once you have that staring you in the face, guess what? A lot of times those opportunities aren't things we can go back and do, are they? They went by, they're done. Maybe it was an activity that was planned and you would have needed to actually attend that activity on that date and that time, and now it's gone. The opportunity is gone forever. So just understand which opportunities you've missed, and sometimes we miss them forever because we said yes to something else. Another reason for me personally is to be careful about saying no, because I want to avoid overcommitment. I'm pretty sure there's nobody in this room today that does their best work, that gives their fullest self to other people when they're overcommitted. The people that I know that become overcommitted, and I've done it myself, those of you who know me know I'm very transparent about the fact that many of the topics that I talk about are the ones that I need to be reminded of. And I've overcommitted to people because I don't like to displease anybody either. Clients, for example, can you do this? Can you do this? I've gotten better about it, but I'm also self-employed. So I'm thinking out here, I need to do this because this is my income. This is how I get paid. On the other hand, I also like to do quality work. I like to have quality relationships. I can't do that if I'm overcommitted in either one of those areas, can I? So I'm going to avoid overcommitment, or at least lessen it. Let's put it that way, because we'll never get to perfection, but I can lessen it by saying no. Another one is it's empowering. And again, I don't want you to put your shoulders back and your nose up in the air and say, ha, 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 now I say no to everybody. But it does feel pretty good, doesn't it? Because you took control of your own life. Imagine that. You had a choice, and you made the choice that helped you take control of your own life. And that is empowering. And we can circle that right back to the assertiveness and self-confidence that we were talking about earlier, because that all ties together. It builds trust. You know why it builds trust? Because when I say no to something with my clients, they know I'm only doing that because it's the best answer in this situation, and they trust me about that. It's not because I'm doing it just to show that I can. There's a trust level there, so that they know when I say yes, I will give my full heart to whatever I've said yes to. But if I say no, it's because it's not the best thing for either one of us. I've had people ask me to do certain programs that I don't really have a lot of interest in. I can't do my best work if I'm not interested in it. And I said that to a client once, and she started laughing. She said, I figured you'd say that, because she knew me well enough to know that I want to be a quality person and present quality information. And that builds trust in a relationship. It may even develop respect. I do think that that particular client, I'm pretty sure, respected me for that. She wanted me to do that work because it was going to make her job easier. And let's face it, isn't that why sometimes people ask you to do things? 8 and 9. 8 was overcommitment, Elizabeth. Number 8, overcommitment. Number 9, empowering. So overcommitment and empowering. You're welcome. But we want to develop that respect, don't we? So that when something does come up later, we've got that bond built. It also helps us avoid our own resentment, like I mentioned earlier. Resentment creates toxins in our body. We all experience resentment from time to time. I could name things right today that I'm a little resentful about. I don't dwell on them, and I'm not going to add to that pile by saying yes to things that somebody's asking me to do because it serves them well. It helps us avoid our own resentment. Absolutely, Danny, it makes us stressed. Hey, I don't know about y'all, but I have plenty of that without creating more by not saying no when I need to. I'm pretty sure everybody in the room has plenty of it, so we don't need to add stress by not saying no. I hope you're finding some other reasons, and I hope you're saying, you know what, I never thought of that, but I need to make sure I say no more often. You stop enabling others. This is a big one. Now, we don't typically think of it in those terms, do we? But with my sister, some of the times I've said no, and I didn't say no a lot. She passed away in 2018, and I did not feel guilty. Let me put it that way. I felt like she and I had a great relationship. I talked to her every Saturday for the past 3 years before she died. But there were times where I did not say yes to her, and I felt like I was doing her the favor, if that makes sense, because I was enabling her. And I don't think that serves people well sometimes. It's sort of the tough love thing, isn't it? My sister was a smoker, and I'm not judging that one way or the other. My entire family was a smoker when I was growing, were smokers, but she had 2 different kinds of lung cancer and blood clots 8 times before she passed away over a period of years. I helped her out financially, but there were times when I could tell by the way she was talking that she needed finances because she was going to spend it on something that wasn't healthy for her. And I said no. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about enabling others. Patrons who come in and ask the same things over and over again, you know they know how to do it. Yes, you have to be careful because they're patrons. Okay, so let's switch it over to a coworker. This person knows how to do it, but you've made it easy for them because you keep enabling them to ask you because they keep doing it and you keep saying yes. And what gets rewarded gets repeated. So of course they're going to keep asking. You're enabling them. So when you step back from that and look at it, it's both your faults, isn't it? Natalia says sometime along life you could be greatly affecting yourself, but when other people in your family are experiencing some tough health problems at the time, you're getting your plans for the future set up. Yeah, it makes it tough, doesn't it? And there's kind of a balance there. We can kind of look at it and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to help, and this is all I can do to help, but I'm more than willing to do that. On the other hand, there will be nobody to help me. And I need to make sure, like you said, Natalia, that I'm taken care of as well, because there's not going to be anybody there to do that for me. You'll have increased focus because you don't have the 3,912 things lined up. You only have 2,912, remember? So you'll have more focus. I don't know about you, but when I overcommit, my focus starts to scatter. Maybe that's happened to some of you. Sometimes it's inevitable. There are certain things that I've committed to that for some reason gel at about the same time, and I'm committed to them wholeheartedly, and I will give my high quality work that I am determined to do, but I am a little less focused on other things during that time. So you'll have increased focus if you're careful about saying no. You'll be more aware of your boundaries. And I think somebody actually mentioned the word boundary earlier. It's so important. And again, not to put up fences, not to turn people away, not to make people dislike you, none of that. But I know where my boundaries are. I have a friend that I've known for many years, and some of you have probably heard part of this story. And he's a very negative person, and every time I talk to him, it's very negative. And I can mention something positive, and he'll turn it negative. And I'll say something positive, and he'll say, "Yeah, but," that kind of a thing. And we were talking in December, and he got really snarky about something, and it wasn't even directed at me, but I had to set a boundary. And I said something very, I can't remember the exact words I used, but very assertive, calm, but very assertive, standing my own ground. And he hung up on me. First time in decades that's ever happened. And when I hung up the phone, I thought, okay, if it's time to let go of that, that's a boundary I need to create. Because what it was causing for me was a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration. And so I got an email from him apologizing for the abrupt end to our conversation, but he started right in on the negativity again. And I thought, okay, I can re-engage, but my stomach actually churned thinking about that because of the negativity. So I thought, okay, boundary. So I typed him a really nice email and I said, I don't have the emotional energy right now to engage in this. So I'm going to have to step away. And I didn't hear from him. And my birthday was in April and I got a nice card from him. And so I thought, okay, if I pick up the phone, we're going to start that whole thing over again. So boundary in place. Are you hearing this? I didn't say it was fun. I just said it was necessary. Okay. So my boundary was in place. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be kind to him. I still care about him, but I sent him an email and I said, thank you so much for the card. I really appreciate it. Love the dog on the front. Reminds me of Brody. I still miss Brody. He has 2 golden retrievers. We're always talking about dogs. I said, I really appreciate the card. Hope everything's well for you. And Christine is his girlfriend. And that's how I left it. That was my boundary. And he emailed back and said, glad you got it early. Hope you have a good year. The boys are doing fine. That's his dogs. I emailed once more and that was it. I'll send him a card for his birthday. And that's probably how we'll interact now. And that might sound harsh to some of the people in the room today. And yet I have to tell you that there's a lot less stress in my life. Somebody said, well, why don't you just cut him off? Because I've known him forever. And we've been good friends. He just has gone down this route of being negative all the time, and I'm going to choose not to go down that route. What's your boundary? You don't have to tell me today, but some of you in this room have a boundary that you need to start setting. And it doesn't mean you have to cut people off. It just means you have to take care of yourself. You need to protect yourself. Exactly, Joanne. I'm showing him what I can and will, right? What I can and will listen to. And I had dealt with that for a long time. And you know how sometimes you deal with things for a long time, like people who are taking advantage of you, right? You're enabling them. You deal with it for a long time, and then suddenly it smacks you upside the head that this is not beneficial to you and you need to take a step back. Brent said you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Exactly. Walk away and when to run. I ran, Brent, and it's okay. And I hope he's always in my life to that extent. But I don't ever want to re-engage in the negativity that went on for many years, and I allowed it because we were friends for all those years. Another thing is you're going to learn your own limits, kind of like what I was just referring to. I know what my limits are now. I know how much I'll tolerate from other people now. Sometimes I probably go a little too far the other way. But I have to tell you that my life has become calmer and I am more at peace with myself now, even when I know I've disappointed somebody else. I have a friend in my neighborhood who has asked me out for lunch a number of times, and she tends to be a complainer about everything, the sun, the rain, the bugs, the leaves, the whatever. And so I don't enjoy that time a lot. And I haven't gone to lunch with her. I have gone to lunch with other friends over the last few months. She invited me to dinner Sunday night, and I've taken care of her house, her and her husband's house, for many years when they go away for the summer. And she found somebody else to do that because I'll be moving in a few months, and that's great. So she invited me to dinner. My first reaction, honestly, I shouldn't even share this with you, was I don't want to go over there and listen to that. But then I stepped back and I said, I don't want to hurt her feelings either. I can pull up my bootstraps and go over there and spend a couple hours Sunday night. So that's what I'm going to do. Do you see the balance there? Where it's not what my preferred thing would be to do on Sunday night, but it's okay because I want her to feel good. Now, I'm not going to do it every week, and I won't go to lunch with her, but we're going to have dinner that night, and we'll have a nice visit, and that will be good. Danny said, what do you do when parents or family members that ask you for favors, you say no, and they make you feel guilty, so you turn around and say yes, you feel guilty because you know one day you'll need that same favor in return. How to handle this? Well, if you really do think there's some reciprocity there and you're going to need something in return, I guess you probably need to go ahead and do what they've asked. But remember I said what gets rewarded gets repeated? You are rewarding them and their attempt to make you feel guilty by capitulating and doing whatever they ask you to do. You have to decide, and Danny, you're the only one that can decide. Is it more important for me to say no, or, you know what, just going to let it go? I'm just going to go ahead and do what they asked me to do. I've done that with people before where it's just not worth, it's kind of one of those pick your battles things. But if they're asking you for favors where you're enabling them, the only way that stops is for you to set boundaries. Rarely do they come to the realization themselves that they're using you. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, Danny. I have no idea. It's too hard, isn't it? It's too hard for me to determine that because I'm not in your family. I don't know what the situation is. Dee says don't count on that reciprocity. Yep, I agree with you, Dee. The likelihood, if they keep doing it, the likelihood of them ever reciprocating would be slim. And you shouldn't be doing it for that reason anyway. If you're going to do the favor for them, it should be because you want to do the favor for them. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm not a psychologist. Let me just put in a disclaimer here. I'm just talking from life experience. My godson died the same year my sister died. My sister and my sister-in-law died within 24 hours of each other, and then my godson passed away about 6 weeks after that. And I'm going to tell you that when he was growing up, he was a troubled teen. And there were some things that my husband did for him to let him know that we loved him and we cared about him. It didn't change his behavior, sadly. And he died at 36, partly because of the way he had abused his own body. But I never stopped loving him. And I let him know he lived 1,000 miles away from me. But I let him know right up to the end that I still loved him, even though he had done things that I didn't love. And I talked to his mom the other day, and she said something to me to the effect of, you were always there for him. And I said, she said, you and Guy, that was my husband saying, you and Guy were always there for him. And I said, we loved him. It didn't mean that we accepted what he did. And it didn't mean that we kept paying out money after he had abused that privilege a couple times. We quit, but we always loved him. Do you hear that? You can love somebody and quit doing the favors that they're asking for only because it serves them. So I hope that made sense, and I hope it wasn't too simplistic, because it's a tough subject. Natalia said many people almost impose their political boundaries that many of us could feel pain even by observing this new way of stating them. Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things I won't engage in. I've had people on the phone, I've had neighbors try to engage me in that. I don't engage, period. And I say that. I do not engage in political conversations, period, the end. And I've pretty well trained everybody. Do you hear the no within that? I didn't have to say the word no, but I said I don't and I won't engage in those kinds of conversations, because they always get off the rails, don't they? Danny said this happens when I'm off and I want to relax a bit since my daughter's at school, or sometimes I have my things that don't get done because I'm doing what they want. Okay, so if they are not, and I don't want to get into this in the chat box because I know it's too personal, but if they're not living with you, they don't need to know when you're off. I'm just going to throw that out there. So, yeah, no expectations. Tough love is exactly right. And it doesn't always work. God bless my friend, she tried that with my godson a number of times, and it didn't necessarily work, but it made her feel like she was doing the best thing for both of them, even if it didn't work. Dee, it's just, now here's the thing. You got to be strong about that, don't you? Because people will suck you in like a vacuum cleaner into that kind of stuff without you even knowing it. They'll start talking about something totally innocent and flip it to a political discussion. So whenever, and my friend in Arizona, my godson's mom did that a few months ago, and she made some just general comment that was absolutely political, and I said, I do not discuss politics. Now, I've known her for decades. Well, I didn't mean to make it political. Yeah, you did. I didn't say that to her. I just said, well, I won't discuss politics. And we stopped that. So those are the boundaries, the limits that we're talking about. Absolutely recently, Melissa, you're absolutely right. And part of that being fed is the media we listen to, the social media, the news media, all those kinds of things. Some of that is feeding stuff that we don't need to feed. Be careful of what you're feeding, folks. Whatever side it is, whatever, it doesn't matter. Be careful what you're feeding, because remember what your mind does. Oh, Linda's looking for all of this, so that's what I will draw into her realm and pile on about. So remember what your brain does. Focus on your strengths. When you say no, that's what you get to do, and you become stronger. You can say yes to you. When you say no to other things, just like, who just said that? Danny, when you're off, you need to relax. You're better for your daughter when you have time to relax. You get to say yes to you when you say no to other people. It doesn't mean you have to do it every time you're off. It just means you need to be realistic and honest with yourself about how often this is happening and what it's doing to you emotionally when it's going on. You'll be less fatigued. Self-care, absolutely, Yvonne. It's exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? The stress that we talked about earlier, the margins being gone because we're saying yes too much, not establishing our boundaries, all of that, those create fatigue. We wear ourselves out because we're having this internal discussion about, shouldn't have said that. Why didn't I tell them no? Why are they doing this to me? All of a sudden, they are doing this to me? No, they're not. I am allowing this to happen. Ouch, Linda, that hurt my toes. I know. I tell people I will step on your toes. I try not to make them bleed. But when I step on your toes and I make you uncomfortable and I say you are the person that's allowing this because it's truth, then maybe I will get you to actually take action when we're done here today. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. Now, again, if it's a boss and this is part of your job description, you really don't want to do it, you don't have any choice. No is not the appropriate answer in those kinds of situations. But if it's your boss and you already have a full plate, maybe the word no isn't the appropriate answer, but the answer might be, here's what I have scheduled for this week and this is all I can get done. What would you like me to let go so that I can do the new project? It's another way of restating the no answer, isn't it? Not because you're lazy, not because you don't want to do the work, but because you simply are struggling to prioritize. And remember, that's one of the things we talked about. It'll be easier to prioritize when you say no. So the way you say no in that situation is, I'm not going to have time to get all of this done. Which one should I let go? It's realistic, isn't it? Isn't that cat adorable? I have two adorable cats, but they're not that color. You'll have a better quality of life. Add everything together that we've talked about. We've already talked about 19 other things. There's nothing in there that's going to lessen the quality of your life, is there? So we've got to be willing to do some of these things so that we have a better quality of life. Hey, question for you. Quick poll. Just say yes. Do you realize that life does not get any longer with every day that goes by? I just wanted to hear that from you. Coming from someone who has experienced more years than probably most of the people in the room, it doesn't get any longer, folks. And I want to have the best quality of life I can have going forward. So I have to reflect on this periodically. George, I'm sorry. I did not mean to startle you with that news, but it is true. Yes, Gwen, it is recorded. The last one is you will simplify your life. For those of you who are introverts and you need quiet time and you need recharging time and all of that, when I finally came to that realization, and I'm going to tell you, I did not realize it was connected to my introvertedness, which I don't think is actually a word, for many years, because people looked at me like I was kind of weird when I would say, I want to be alone. I don't want to go out to dinner. I don't want to go out for drinks. I don't want to do this. And I thought I was kind of weird, but I had accepted my weirdness, if you will. Then I started really researching and studying and reading books on introverts, and it dawned on me like a 2x4 that I am a very high introvert. Now, I am what I consider, and what I read about a couple years ago, I am what's called an outgoing introvert. I love what I do. I love it. I don't ever want to stop doing this, because if I can just touch one person in today's session and help them have a better quality of life, I've had a good day. But I don't want to go out and party with y'all. It's just not who I am. I need the time to recharge. That simplifies my life. Saying no to some of the things that I won't enjoy. Why would I go if I'm not going to enjoy them? Unless it's time for me to take a step back, like with my neighbor, to make sure she feels like I'm not avoiding her, because that's not what I intend to be. I just know I enjoy my own time better than I enjoy being out and around with people most of the time. If you've never seen this before, and I just added it recently, so I don't have it here in front of me, but just look up a video that says spinning plates sometime and see if you can find this. I did describe you, Nancy. Yeah, it's just who we are, and it's okay. We're okay. I'm okay. You're okay, right? There's a book called, and I picked up the book just for the title many years ago, and it's called I'm Not Crazy, I'm Just Not You. Wow, that's pretty profound, isn't it? Yes, exactly, Susan. Where I remember seeing it was on the Ed Sullivan Show. That dates me, doesn't it? But it's a profound life lesson, folks. It's not meant to be a life lesson, but it is. How many plates can you keep spinning if you say yes to everybody? And I don't put videos in my webinars because I've been in too many webinars where the videos get messed up and so forth. And so it's just too much of an aggravation. But just look it up. Spinning plates. The guy's name, I think, was Henrik, Henrik. And its last name started with a B. I can't remember this particular one. There are probably others. But all it symbolizes is, think of something in your life for every one of those plates. And what he eventually does is he gets them all spinning, but as one is spinning really fast, another one starts to teeter and starts to almost fall off. Isn't that what life is? And we say yes and yes and yes to all of those going across there, all 8 of those going across there, but one of them's going to fall. And when it falls, it crashes, it breaks. And I don't know about you, but I don't want that to be me or my health or my mental stability because I've said yes too much. Can it cause some anxiety in a relationship? Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But just realize you can't keep all the plates spinning all of the time. Exactly, Natalia, that's what it is. Or relationships sometimes too, right? Extra tasks, extra things that people have asked you to do that really aren't even in your wheelhouse, so to speak. It's not really what you're good at, but you're there and you always say yes. So why not? Is what they're thinking. So just think about how many plates can you keep spinning? But the next question is even more important. How many plates should you even try to keep spinning? Only you know the answer to that. I know what's priority in my life, and I've worked on it for years. When my husband got sick with cancer, I got a rude awakening to what was important in my life. And for 11 years, he was what was important in my life. Now, did I still work during that time? Yeah, I even went and got a couple college degrees during that time as a plan B. But I knew that the spinning plate first was him, and that was the one that had to keep spinning. The next one was my work. It had to keep spinning. Along with that, we're taking care of my critters. They were before my work, actually. And then the schooling, and then other things that people needed me to do. Do you see what I'm saying? We have to make those decisions for ourselves, don't we? And they're not always easy decisions. But how many should you even try to keep spinning? So we talked about 21 potential benefits that might be important enough for you to actually make the effort required to change, because there will be effort required. And it isn't a one and done. It isn't a flipping of the switch. But information. Number 21 is simplify your life. Susanna. This is not a flipping of the switch. This is not, oh, I went to a webinar on May 26th and now I know how to say no and I never have to worry about this again. It will have to be intentional. It will need to be practiced. It will need to be refreshed from time to time when you slide back into old habits. But you need to choose which ones. 2 and 3, way back when, 2 was self-confidence and 3 was time management. 2 was self-confidence and 3 was time management. So here's the key. I've already told you information is not transformation. You have a lot of information already. We've got more to cover, but it's not transformation. Only personal application becomes transformation. You cannot do everything physically, emotionally, financially, relationally. You just can't. Where are you going to draw the line? What boundaries are you going to establish? So now I want you to think about, okay, and I think some of you have already been thinking pretty deeply about this next question. What are some of the situations to which you might need to say no? And I want you to just jot a couple down on your handouts. I've got many listed on mine. And the way I come up with these things is I start thinking through my own life of where do I need to say no? Extra work projects. Absolutely, Yvonne. Anything illegal. Yeah, I would. That's a given, isn't it? Well, it is for some of us. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for everybody in the room, but I'm pretty sure for everybody in the room. But absolutely. And even, bending that a little bit. Exactly, Daniel. Is exactly what I was going to say. Illegal, unethical, immoral, or just against the grain of what I want to be, right? I don't think anybody in the room is going to do anything illegal, probably not anything unethical knowingly, but sometimes it's just against the grain of what I feel comfortable with. Yep, exactly, Courtney. Anything I'm not comfortable with. Now, I don't want to use I'm not comfortable with that for an excuse not to help people, not to do things that I know in my heart are the right things to do. Anything you don't really want to do. Yeah, and sometimes we have to, don't we, Elsie? Sometimes we have to because it's part of our job. We don't really want to do it. There are things that I do in my work all the time that I would rather not do. Typing things, billing, invoicing, that kind of stuff, because I'd rather save my time to be here with you today. I need to do that. I need to say yes to that because it makes me more productive in the long run. Danny said family members work outside of your job. I don't know what it is for you, but you need to know which situations. You know now why you need to do it. When do you need to do it? We're getting pretty serious here, folks. We're narrowing it down so you will have the answer in front of you when we're done today. Whether you choose to actually take action or not is going to be up to you. Uncomfortable situations. Sometimes it's good to stretch ourselves, isn't it, Danny? In an uncomfortable situation. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. We went to lunch and we came back and we were looking on the computer in my office because we want to go to the World Equestrian Center here in Ocala that they just built before I move away. So we were looking to see what they had going on. And it's one of those things where I want to do that. And we were talking about the horses and so forth. And my niece and I had gone horseback riding twice up in Madison, Georgia over the last 3 years. But the last time I was there, I almost fell off the horse, and somebody else did fall off of a horse and broke her collarbone while she was there. And so I was telling my friend, I said, I loved that experience. I loved those horses, but I know somebody else who was an actual professional rider and ended up has a problem with their left side of their body now because they fell off during a jump and will never be the same. So, I need to stretch myself. I stretched myself by going horseback riding twice, but even if my niece wanted to go, which I think she's a little worried now too, it's time to say no to that, isn't it? So I'm not comfortable with that anymore. Uncomfortable situations can be good for us, but we need to realize whether we're doing it because of somebody else's expectations or our own. That's funny, Susan, to buy beer. Yeah. Now I have a friend whose sister was dying of lung cancer, and her sister would ask for cigarettes, and she said, I told my other sisters she's smoked this many years, and there's nothing that's going to save her now, and she would go out and buy her cigarettes. And I kind of get that. I don't know that I would have been able to do it just because it feels so wrong to me, but that's why I said you have to make your own decisions, don't you? Nothing I say should influence which situations you decide to say no in. I'm trying to help you uncover them, but I can't make that decision. Dee said, no offense, but I found when I say I'm not comfortable with that, others usually are okay with it. Okay with what you're not comfortable with? Is that what you mean, Dee? I'm not sure which way to take that. Or uncomfortable with or they're comfortable with your answer, maybe. Kathy said something requiring a regularly scheduled commitment because due to family obligations, I can't be counted on. And that's a simple enough answer, isn't it? George said those 30-second tasks that people spend more time asking, explaining rather than just doing the tasks themselves. Yeah, and they never take 30 seconds, do they? I mean, in the end, they probably take longer than that anyway. Yeah, there are people that keep pushing it. Enabling my lazy kids. It happens. It could be kids. It could be significant other. It could be your coworkers. It could be your supervisor. It could be your peers. It could be whomever. If you're going to do my work for me, I'm going to let you do my work for me, right? Maybe. Jennifer said assisting patrons who constantly ask for assistance for things we're pretty sure they know how to do. And here's a thing to think about, Jennifer. I don't know that it'll work, but when somebody says that, you say, well, we've talked about that before. What would you do? I don't know how to do this on the computer. Okay, so we talked about that Tuesday. What do you think you should do next? If you do that a few times, occasionally, not always, they think, oh, I might as well not ask her. She's going to ask me what I should do next. Sometimes we can tweak their behaviors a bit. We're not going to change them, but sometimes we can tweak how they interact with us by not allowing them to take advantage. I'm sorry, Teresita. I'm sorry. Dee says, I say that in response to those that ask something of me. Usually it stalls them or oftentimes they're taken aback. It doesn't necessarily work with anyone. You're right, but you got to try, don't you? I can't promise you that anything we're talking about today will work 100% of the time. Matter of fact, I doubt that it would work 100% of the time. But until we actually do something different, guess what? We get the same results, don't we? Remember the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if you leave here today and you do the exact same thing, you change nothing in your process, the fact that you attended this webinar is not going to get you any different results, right? So that's what I want to make sure we're on the same page. So some situations I'm going to throw out to you. You write them down if they're appropriate to you. Sometimes it's our customers or our patrons. Sometimes it's a committee. I'm not a committee person. I know that about myself. If it's something I'm wholly invested in, maybe. But if I'm not, no. Activities, like some of you mentioned, certain activities that people are asking you to join in. Let's go have a party. Let's go out for drinks. Let's do this. Let's do that. No, no thanks. Just don't want to do that. Invitations you get to certain things might be involved. Just thinking through, making sure you're covering all your bases. Projects. Now, it might be something you need to say yes to because it's your job, because your supervisor asked you, whatever that might be. But if it's something everybody's just saying, oh, who wants to work on this project? And it's not really something you'd like to work on, maybe you think about it before you say yes. Others' expectations, put that in capital letters, highlight it in yellow. There are times when it's appropriate for us to say yes to others' expectations. There are other times where we need to step back and say, this is their expectation, not mine. So this is a big one as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes, oh, Linda, this doesn't make any sense. Good ideas. Well, but what are you going to replace? What are you going to take out? If somebody has a good idea that's going to drain your time because you say yes to it, what are you going to give up in exchange? Because you're not going to create the time you need. Email signups sounds silly, doesn't it? Subscriptions, newsletters, believe it or not, sometimes the time that those take away, if we get rid of them, would allow us the extra time to create margins. I unsubscribed to 2 this morning. One, I wasn't even sure where they got my name or email address. The other one, it's just not of interest enough to me to engage me when that email comes through. So I'm going to say every week I unsubscribe to something, because you know how it goes. No matter what you're looking at, no matter what you're researching, you end up having to sign up for something. But I unsign up, I unsubscribe as often as I can. And that leaves me a little bit of margin because I don't have all of those emails flooding my inbox every day and every week. So just think of some little things. Yes, Elizabeth, I've heard of that. Yes, it was, John. But aren't you glad you're here? That's different. If you're glad you're here, I hope you're good. I hope you're glad you're here. Yes, Elizabeth, I've heard of Unroll Me being super helpful. For me, it's just as easy. I don't want to add anything else to things I need to worry about. So it's just as easy for me to click on the unsubscribe button and take that few seconds and get out of there. So just a thought. Think of the little things that you can say no to. Sometimes it's an opportunity because maybe the timing isn't right. It might be an opportunity for you at some point, but right now, if you're overloaded with everything else, probably not. Yes, Yvonne, exactly. We need to remember that. Thank you, Susan. So there might be opportunities coming along, but remember, that's one of the reasons we need to learn to say no, is because we miss opportunities that we really would want to be engaged in because we said yes to all the things that really don't matter that much to us. So opportunities are some situations you might need to say no to. It'd be great, except that there's this other thing that I'm working on right now that's more important. Things that drain you. I was listening to a webinar the other day. I try to do that myself. I try to learn and develop and have personal growth. But the way the webinar was presented was stressing me out. I found myself getting tense. And I've probably done that to people before in my webinars. I hope not, or at least not very often. But I finally just quit. I thought this really isn't good for me, and I'm taking out an hour of my day, and I really don't want to do that. It kind of drained me. Instead of filling me up, which was what I was hoping for when I attended, it drained me, and so I just exited. Reciprocity, like I said, that might be something you need to say no to. I'll do this if you'll do that. Well, if I don't really want you to do what you're offering to do, why would I do what you're asking me to do? Right? If I like what I'm currently doing and you're offering to do it, if I'll do this for you in exchange, but I don't really want to do what you're asking me to do, then I'm not going to say yes to that. Anything else that you might want to fill in? Is there anything else, any other situation that you'd like to share in the chat box so that other people know that there are other things we need to say no to. There may or may not be, and that's perfectly okay if there isn't. I just didn't want to go past this segment without giving you that opportunity. I do see people typing, so I'm going to give that a second to pop up. It's not popping up. Okay, there you go. Jennifer said, books are similar. Actually, I tell patrons there's no rule you have to finish a book or read it in order. That's exactly right, Jennifer. And I have just deleted books. I use an e-reader a lot because I carry it from place to place. I've deleted books when I've gotten part way into it, and I feel some sort of obligation. Isn't that odd? Don't you feel sometimes an obligation to finish it? Even magazines, I still get certain magazines, and some of them are for my work. And I'll look at it and I'll think, none of this really applies to me, but it's a magazine. I should probably read it. What if there's one little glimmer of something in there that I need? Well, I'll find it somewhere else, somewhere along the line. Can you say no after you say yes? Absolutely. You have a right to do that. I don't know what the situation is that might happen in, but it's your life, right, Joanne? And sometimes you need to say, you know what? I thought through this a little further and I realized this isn't going to work and I need to withdraw. It's okay. You have a right to do that. Will you aggravate somebody? Maybe. Anything that violates your rights? Absolutely. Life's too short to read bad books. I agree. Yeah, exactly, Yvonne. I keep hoping it gets better. It never does. Andrea said, all this makes me think of the saying, poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. And isn't that true? And it does not constitute me saying yes to you, right, Andrea? That's the key. Just because you've decided this is something you want done does not mean I have to do it. So that's what we need to think about. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said right at the very beginning. This is not about you being selfish or manipulative or anything like that. It's making sure you're living your best life in a way that actually is good for other people. Because you've made these choices to be your best self, that's going to be better for other people in the long run. Nancy said, when I said yes to a project and then had things added and changed that I never agreed to. And sometimes you need to have that conversation, don't you? You just need to say, I didn't realize we were going to add this chunk of things that's going to take 3 hours out of my week every week. And I'm going to have to somehow backtrack on this. It's hard to have those conversations because you know what? Somewhere deep down, we think we're admitting failure of some sort. No, we're admitting that things were not clear at the beginning. Expectations were not expressed at the beginning. And it's okay to we need to take another look at that. That would be a good way to say it. We need to step back and take another look at this. Helping people who never have time to help you. Absolutely. And it depends. I know some people that just have that nature. I don't. I don't need reciprocity all the time. I'm more than willing. I've helped people that never really helped me. I have a friend that I've helped several times with certain things that when I've asked for help, it hasn't been a good time for that person. I get it. I don't know that I'm going to line up to do another 10 things because then I start to feel used, right? And that's not a good feeling. So we know the why and the when. We just talked about it. Why don't we say no? Well, I'm a people pleaser. Some of you mentioned that right at the beginning. So how are you going to backtrack and not be a people pleaser anymore? You've got to make that decision. Why don't we say no? I don't want to hurt their feelings. Okay, so I'm going to sit here and be resentful instead. Is that a positive way to overcome things? I don't think so. So I want you to see these clearly because if we recognize them, then we can decide what we want to do with them. There are some people I wouldn't hurt their feelings if you threw me off the roof. There are other people where I feel like they're going to use their hurt feelings against me, and that's not a healthy relationship, right? So not hurting their feelings, maybe, maybe not, but think about it before you say yes. I want recognition. Sometimes we don't say no because we want to be recognized for whatever it was that's going on. Let's be honest with ourselves. Guilt. Some of you have mentioned that. It's huge. It's a big deal in our emotional lives. And people, I don't know very many people that get up in the morning and say, gee, I'm going to make Linda feel guilty today so she'll do what I want. It's more of a subconscious thing that they're doing it. But they know it works somewhere deep down. You know, their brain is saying, this worked before, let's try this again. Let's make her feel guilty about this and we'll see how that flies. My mom was really good at that. She would make me feel guilty about not coming to see her enough times during the week and things like that. She chose not to drive, so that was challenging, but that was her choice. I did real well with that, but I know there were times she used it against me. It's there. It's real. Let's admit it. Yep, Dawn said my mom isn't with me anymore. But again, I think that I had a healthy balance there where I didn't let her use it to the point where I was so resentful it caused a rift in our relationship. But I visited often enough. I took her to the grocery store often enough. I took her other places often enough that I felt like I did what I needed to do. So, yeah, it's real. And we all do it. We've all probably done it subconsciously to other people without even realizing we guilted them into something. Sometimes it's just a lack of discipline. We just haven't learned how to say no. We haven't chosen to say no. That's up to us to get the discipline to do that, isn't it? Fear of missing out. What if I say no and they all go out and have a good time? Good for them. What if I say no and they like the way the person does that project? Good for them. You got to make a choice. You can't have it all. Fear of missing out. Here's a term I heard probably been a couple years ago now. I was listening to the Dave Ramsey program while I was exercising, and they had, I think it was Christy Wright that said it. She said, I want you to have JOMO, JOMO, the joy of missing out. JOMO, the joy of missing out. I love that. I have joy every day from missing out on things that people think I should be doing. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound crude, but a psychologist friend of mine uses this in a lot of her sessions, and she will tell you, quit allowing people to should on you. SHOULD. But it makes sense, doesn't it? Sounds crude, but it makes sense. We allow that, don't we? And it's up to us to stop it, or at least lessen it. I don't want to seem selfish. I don't want you to be selfish. I don't want you to even seem selfish. But sometimes people will decide you're selfish when really it's just a self-protection mechanism. Don't be a doormat. Exactly. I don't want to let others down. You know what? You're going to do that if you say yes all the time. There are times you're going to let other people down because maybe you don't do it as well as you could have, or as well as they were hoping you would, or as quick, or whatever. We let people down. I don't want to make a habit of it. Christopher said we're often told of the importance of going above and beyond for our customers. Sometimes it's difficult to say no while trying to ensure a satisfying experience. I totally agree with you, Christopher. I have nothing to add to that. I wish I did, because that's important to me as well. I have people tell me sometimes I don't get responses this quickly from other people. I get it. That's just who I am. That's who I want to be. And so I can't say no. It might be 7 o'clock at night when I'm responding. It's just part of who I am, and I feel okay with that. But yeah, we don't want to make promises we can't keep, and sometimes that's the reason we don't say no. Sometimes, and this may occasionally be true, but it's probably not as true as often as we allow it to affect us, we feel their needs are more important than ours. Step back from that. Why? Now, while my husband was sick, I'm going to tell you there were times I took time for myself. There were times when I was traveling because that was my work that I hate to even admit this. I was glad to be traveling because I needed that couple of hours at night in the hotel room where I could just veg out, take a deep breath, because most of the time his needs were more important than mine. But I needed to travel for my work. And that's when I took advantage of that, and I would go grab a bite to eat and take it back to my room and just chill. So make sure that there's a balance there. Sometimes their needs may be more important, but probably not all the time. I don't want to be compared to others. This person would have done this. This person would have agreed to this. Then go ask them, right? I want to avoid confrontation. We all do. Let me just say that right up front. Whether it's with a patron, a supervisor, a coworker, somebody in our families, we'd rather do that. Yvonne said our rule is above and beyond as long as it is within a 15-minute time frame. There you go. You do have to set some boundaries, don't you? Remember we talked about that. Within what your organization requires. So if you always have to say yes, 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 yes at work, maybe there are other areas you need to step back and make sure you haven't gotten into the habit of saying yes when it really isn't the most beneficial thing for you to say. I don't want to make them angry. You know, people get angry when we don't do what they want us to do. Isn't that odd? And yet, are they really concerned about us in this process? Maybe, maybe not. And if they're not, are we really going to live our lives based on them and their feelings and them getting angry at us or making us feel guilty? Might not be healthy, right? I saw this somewhere. I added to it, I think. I can't remember where I originally saw it. I wrote it down for myself. Learn the art of saying no. Don't lie. Don't make excuses. Don't over-explain yourself. Just simply decline. No is a complete sentence, folks. If somebody says, let's go here, you can smile and say no or no thanks. That's it. You don't have to come into this long, drawn-out explanation. I have a friend that I dearly love, but she will create these elaborate, I'll call them fibs, but they're probably more than that. When somebody asks her to do something she doesn't want to do, she creates an elaborate story about why she can't, and it's not true. She will share with me that it's not true. So then when she says no to me, I looked at her one day and I said, you don't have to lie to me if you don't want to do this. Just say no. And I was smiling when I said it because I know her that well. No, I really do. And she pulls out her calendar and shows me what she has scheduled. So that's okay. Yeah, it's an important concept. For me, I'd rather hear the truth from you. But no really is a complete sentence, isn't it? We don't need to do that. So how do we learn to do this? We've talked about the when, the why we should, the why we don't. What are we going to do differently? We have to be firm. It's called being assertive. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to be rude. We don't have to be snarky. We don't have to be any of that. We just need to hold our ground like somebody said earlier. Be firm. Be direct. Again, don't dance around why you're doing this. You don't have to go into a 3-paragraph long explanation about why you're going to say no. They really don't care. If you're saying no, that's all they really care about, isn't it? Typically, because you're not going to do what they wanted you to do. All they really need to know is you aren't going to do it. So just be direct. Understand the reason you want to say no. Is it because you're just tired of them asking? Could be a customer, could be your supervisor, could be a coworker, could be a family member, could be whomever. But understand the reason you want to say no. Could be you're exhausted. Could be you are just wrung out and you need those boundaries and those limits set up so that you can recover mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically. Understand the reason you want to say no. You know what that means. It just simply means keep it simple, silly, right? Whoops, that went back the whole line there. Keep it simple, silly. Just give them a simple explanation if you feel like you need some sort of an explanation. One simple sentence will do. I'm sorry, I've got plans. Your plans may be, like mine often are, to sit in a chair and read a book. Those are my plans, and it's okay if I have those plans instead of what you're asking me to do. So just keep it simple. If you can, sometimes it's appropriate to participate partially, but make sure you have boundaries. I can remember years ago, my husband and I were working at the cafe in our church. It was a big church. We had cafe on Saturday night and on Sunday at all the services. And so I told them at the beginning, I said, we can volunteer once a month, and I'll have to give you the dates because my husband travels on some weekends. And they said, oh, that's great. Let's do that. Well, guess what? After about 4 or 5 months, we got the schedule and we were scheduled for every week. Now, somebody could have made an honest mistake, but somebody could have decided that Guy and Linda usually show up when they're supposed to. Or they always show up when they're supposed to if they're on the schedule. So we're just going to put them on every Saturday night. As soon as I saw the schedule, I called and I said, okay, here's the deal. We can either work cafe one Saturday night a month or not at all. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I'm sorry. We'll fix, and they fixed it, and we stayed on the cafe schedule until we moved, and that was great. But we participated partially, but it just wouldn't have worked for us to try to do that every Saturday because, for one thing, the church was so far away, and sometimes it was more appropriate for us to attend on Sunday, and so running back and forth like that didn't work. So that's what I mean by that. Yes, you can feel uncomfortable with asking patrons to leave. Absolutely. But if it is part of your process, you need to. Jennifer said, in the sense of saying no, in the sense of no, it's saying no, you can't continue using our services. But how do I just come out and say we're asking you to leave because you smell? Okay, I would go to your higher ups and find out if you have some wording they would like you to use. Because the last thing you want is to use wording that then is going to get publicized and make the library look bad. So it would be a very private conversation. And I read about this with an employee the other day. And what they did was they called them in, and there were some health issues that were creating that. Maybe you can help them find a way to address that. So it's a very sensitive situation, isn't it? Yes, exactly, Kathy. If you're faithful to show up, you eventually get put in charge or get put on the schedule all the time, right? So Jennifer, that one, the one you were addressing, it's a very challenging thing, but do try to get a consensus on how it should be handled so that it's being handled consistently, but within the boundaries so that your library doesn't come out looking bad if something does happen. Stop the guilt. You feel it coming on. You got to stop and say to yourself, why am I feeling guilty? Is this serving me well? What do I need to do differently here? Understand that refusal is not rejection. You're not rejecting them as a person. You're refusing to do what they've asked you to do. And that's okay. If it's going to benefit you more and it's actually in the end going to benefit them more, then you need to say no, don't you? If anybody has any extra comments for Jennifer, I've never had to deal with that directly, Jennifer. I'm just going to be honest. If you have any extra comments that might be helpful in the situation of somebody having body odor, please share that. Joanne said, address the fact that their clothing smells. That's a great, gentle way to do that. Yes, Ryan. It's Ryan Dowd, I think. Ryandowd. Yes, Wynn. Yeah, absolutely. He has a great webinar on homelessness. And sometimes the people aren't homeless either. There are people that have those issues that don't necessarily struggle with homelessness. Yes, Heather, there is a recording that will be made available. Be kind to yourself. Isn't that what we're talking about here? Again, not to be selfish. Me, 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 me. I'm not asking you to be egocentric, which is being me deep in conversation. I'm asking you to be kind to yourself. The day goes by, the week goes by, the month goes by, you look back and you think, I didn't have any time for me. I did nothing that brought me joy, that brought me a sense of peace, that brought me a sense of contentment and feeling like I was doing something that was valued. Part of saying no is being kind to you, isn't it? Be fair to yourself. It's not fair for you to expect yourself to do everything that everybody asks you to do. It's also not possible. But when you beat yourself up over it, and I've done it before, just saying. I can remember when the client asked me to do a particular program and I said no. I beat myself up for probably 24 hours afterwards because I'm thinking to myself, need to pay the bills, don't like that program. Need to pay the bills, don't want to do that program. Luckily, the no won out and I didn't do the program because it wasn't fair. It really wasn't fair to me or the group I would have been presenting to do something that I wasn't interested in and fully engaged in. So be fair to you. Use phrases that show you do care, whatever the situation is. I'd really like to help. This isn't going to work out for me right now. I wish I could help. This isn't going to work out for me right now. If you're sincere, please do not be insincere in any of this. It won't serve you well and it will come back to bite you. It will haunt you because they'll figure out you weren't really sincere. But if you really do care and you really do wish you could do it, you can use phrases that show you care. I wish I could. It's not going to work out. Thanks for thinking of me. It's not going to work in my schedule right now. When my friend asked me to come to dinner, she said Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday. And I said Thursday and Saturday I have commitments. I could change Saturdays to Sunday, but Sunday would be my preference. If she had said that won't work, then I wouldn't have been able to go to dinner. Use phrases that show you care. Don't embellish your reasons. There was somebody in my family years ago. Person has since passed away. Loved this person dearly, but she would embellish anything she had to say no to. Sometimes she wasn't even saying no, but she just felt bad about whatever was happening and she would embellish it. Then you have to remember. And I won't say it was actually a lie. It was more just like kind of stretching the truth a bit, that it didn't really need to go that far. So don't embellish. You might have to remember what you said, and just giving that keep it simple, silly answer of no or thanks for thinking of me. This isn't going to work into my schedule. That's okay. And it's okay to think about it first. Sometimes when they're putting you on the spot, you say yes because you feel forced into it, or you say no because they put you on the spot. But there's nothing wrong with saying, let me think about it. I'm not sure that will work into my schedule. And then you come back and you say, I checked and it's not going to work for me. That's all you need to say. You don't need to tell them I've got this and this and this and this scheduled. You just need to say it's not going to work for you. So it's okay to think about it first before you say the actual no. Know yourself. Yes, exactly, Danny. Be honest. Be honest with yourself too, right? Know yourself. Know which situations trip your trigger. Which people the hair on the back of your neck goes up as soon as they ask because you feel used or abused. Know yourself. It makes you stronger in the situations where you really do need to say the word no. So know yourself. Know those boundaries we talked about. Know your limits. Know your triggers. You heard one of my triggers earlier when I talked about somebody being totally negative or snarky, even if it's not directed at me. I don't want to carry that stuff. It's why I only watch comedies on TV. I did find one family drama that I enjoy most of the time, but it's mostly comedies. It's mostly, I sent a joke that I had seen, I think it was on Inspire, Inspire More, I think it's called. It's a newsletter I do get every day, and I read it every day, and I scan some of it because it doesn't really sink in for me. But this one was, what do you call the dog magician? A labradabra, a labrador, a labradab, a labracadabra. There's one, a labracadabrador. That's so funny. A labracadabrador. That made me laugh. So those are the things that I try to put into my life so that that strengthens me. Do you see how that would happen? I'm putting positive things into my life. So it strengthens me so that when I do need to say no, and I don't have to say it that often, but when I do need to say no, I feel strong because I've been putting positive things in my life. If I'm putting negative news, negative social media, negative programming, negative games, negative whatever in my mind every day, all day long, my mind is not going to be emotionally strong when it's time to say no, is it? So know yourself, know your own limits and your boundaries. Empathy can enhance the positivity. Absolutely. Yes, I like to be empathetic with people, but I also will not, I'm going to try to avoid taking on the burden. Do you see the difference? I'm going to try to understand what's happening for them and with them, but I'm going to try also not to take on the burden for myself if I can help it, because I do have enough stuff to carry in my own life. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Be careful of that word should. We've talked about that already. There's a lot of things I can do. I'm not going to feel good about them. I'm not feel good about myself. I'm not going to feel good about the person that keeps asking me to do it. So that just because I can doesn't mean I should. That's an important point for a lot of you. Because the more you take on, the more burdened you feel. And that's not good for you. Beware of somebody's persuasion tactics. We already talked about the guilt. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's just they wear you down. It's persistence. Or, Linda, are you sure you can't help with this? Linda, are you sure you don't want to do this? Yes, I'm sure, but thanks for asking. Right? People have really strong persuasion tactics sometimes. And we need to learn to say no to that when it's appropriate. Learn to feel good about saying no. Not, look at me, I tell everybody no about everything. I'm never going to help anybody. That's not what we're talking about. But you need to feel good that for today, because you came in at a D level on being able to say no, and you moved to a G, and you should feel good about that. And maybe 6 months from now, you'll be at a J. Good for you. I don't ever expect you to get to a Z where you're perfect at saying no and you say no to everything. I don't want that for you. I just want you to be discerning. I want you to be strategic about when you say yes. I want it to be the best thing for you and them when you say yes to something. Sometimes you can offer an alternative if you'd like to. Well, this won't work for me, but if you could do it next week, I could probably go. If they want you there, they'll do it. Quick story about saying no. Yes, the persuasion tactics are annoying. Absolutely. A friend of mine years ago said, I really want to go back to college, but I handle the children's program at my church, and it's a massive undertaking. I said, so get somebody else to do it. Yeah, nobody else will step up. I said, is it that important to the people in your church? If it is, somebody will step up. So she decided after a while that she really, really wanted to go to church or go to college. And so she told the people that were in charge of all the programs, I'm not going to be able to do the children's program. And you know what they said? Okay. And she was stunned. And she went for one semester and she quit because where her heart was really with the children's program, but she felt taken advantage of. That's what was going on underneath all of that. The alternative was they could quit the program. They actually found somebody else to help with it, but she quit college, and that was perfect. That was the absolute right decision for her because she wanted to be more involved with the children's programming. She felt like she was making an impact there. So yeah, she offered the alternative. It didn't work very well. She had a choice, didn't she? But she was fibbing a little bit to herself because what she really wanted was to be appreciated. So know yourself, feel good about saying no, rinse and repeat everything we've said because it's not going to stick forever. You can be a good person and still say no. You need to hear that today. Just know why you're saying no, what's the reason behind it, and also know why you're saying yes. Put on your own oxygen mask first. That's exactly right. You can't serve other people well unless you know why you're doing it and you feel good about doing it, or it is part of your job and it's just one of those things you need to suck it up and do it. Sometimes that's the case, isn't it? So think about this. What are you going to do differently to become more adept at saying no? Not perfect. You're just going to take a baby step. You're going to become a little bit better at it. Write something down. Know myself. Exactly, George. I like that. I might have to change that to know yourself because that's exactly what you're doing, isn't it? When you're saying yes to everybody, you're knowing yourself. Well, you need to KNOW yourself well enough to say no, don't you? Think more before saying yes. Here's another statement for you. Learn to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best. I love that. Learn to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best. Thank you all for being here today. I hope you've gotten something that you're going to hang on to that's so important to you. You absolutely will become better at saying no. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. If you need me, you have my email address at the bottom of the first page of your handouts. Drop me an email. I'll try to help in any way I can. Thanks again for being here. I look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. Thanks,
Thank you,
Deb. Thanks,
Linda.
Taylor. Thanks, Jose.
Oh.
Yes, thanks, everybody.
Thank you for such an informative webinar this afternoon. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, we ask that you join us on June 11th for Linda Bruno's next webinar, Customer Service from the Inside Out. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. And thank you everyone for attending and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Linda.